Hello and welcome to Night at When Will It End, the podcast, where after hours, when the sun has set, these two jackoffs come to life and we talk about the movies, and let me tell you how we talk about them in chronological order of their release so that it makes sense as we track the expansion of the universe of the franchise. And of course, we are 2 movies deep into our Night at the Museum series. Look, we got so much mail from listeners. You gotta do, when you gonna do Night?
It was endless. This is Charles, by the way.
When you gonna go to the museum?
It was crazy. We've heard a lot from our listeners. They email us constantly, send us Facebook messages constantly. Just, it's a barrage. We actually had to hire an intern to deal with it, and he was sending me notes every day, being like, they will not shut about Night at the Museum.
There were death threats. I moved my wife and cat into witness protection.
Get into the fucking museum.
They were confused. I was like, we've got to go to the Smithsonian. And they were like,
get into the fucking museum.
Into the massive basement that sits beneath Washington, D.C., the vault beneath the mall that we're all acutely aware of. Charles, we're talking today about Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian. And look, let me just say this. When you talk about upping the ante on a series.
How do you do it?
New York City, right? It's sort of famously a second-class place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
When you think about cities on the East Coast and the excitement that accompanies them, you're like, New York City, yawn.
Yeah, boring.
Where are we? Tacoma?
I don't even know what that is. But that makes sense.
It's a city in Washington State. The way you ratchet up the excitement in a series is to get out of boring old New York City.
Yeah.
And truck on down Route 95. You get in your airplane. You get in your 18-wheeler.
Yep.
You get in your squirrel.
Yep.
You head on down south to a little city I like to call Washington, D.C., the city that never sleeps.
Wait, isn't that New York?
Who's to say?
No, it can't be New York. New York is a podunk little piece of shit.
New York's too sleepy. No one likes it. Backwaters town, not much of a place. But yes, wow. I imagine when kids out there realize that, we were no longer in the boring old Natural History Museum, but rather we were going to Washington, D.C., they were like, fuck me up. I'm going to rip a bowl before this one. I bet in the line outside the ticket booth in 2009, people were passing out, doing ketamine, fucking each other, getting stabbed. I bet it was a full-on lot scene outside of the queue for opening night of Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian.
I mean, are you, because of the Smithsonian, because we're in D.C. now, is it just the hype of being in a big... I mean, Josh, they say it twice, maybe more in the movie. This is the biggest museum in the world.
It's the biggest museum in the world and the coolest city in the world. I think it's like a multiplying effect. Where what's cooler than being in Washington, D.C.? Simple. Being at the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. It's just math.
I love that a part of this movie is the Natural History Museum in New York City is we've been using wax figures and tiny miniatures for decades. How about we up the fucking ante and make this something that wasn't built in the 80s. And our success story, Larry, who's now a full-blown infomercial god, he's like, I like the little wax figure. I like the little baby man and the horse. Let's go
I want us to go finish your thought.
Well, I just like that the natural progression is not only go to the largest museum in the world, but also the museum in the world that still looks like the 80s. I've been to the Smithsonian in the last few years, and it looks... I mean, this was shot after I was there, and it's still looks like a shitty fucking place. We talked about this last episode. Museums suck, and that's because they have old shit that they refuse to get new shit.
Well, we'll get into why exactly this movie is a toxically problematic nightmare for so many reasons, but I want to step back and say from a macro vision, 2 observations. The first is this series of any one we've done so far is the wildest yet. For the sheer number of questions raised by each successive installment raised more and more questions about the world of the film that are not addressed in any way, and it is perplexing. Massive, wild shit happens constantly in this world with absolutely no context or explanation that left me swirling with questions, of which I wrote down many of them, so look forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest one is just it seems to be the fairy tale like kid's idea that after 9 o'clock everything just ceases to exist? Or like, I know that maybe these are New York filmmakers where nothing really does happen after 10 p.m., I've been told. I've never bothered to go there.
They call it the Sleepy City on the river.
Yeah, so it would make sense that, a daring escape across the largest fucking museum in the world, which takes place over the entire mall. They call it the mall, right? Because there's all these little shops and...
In D.C.
Yeah. So, like, there's...
You got Spencer's Gifts. You got Hot Topic.
Right. Amelia Earhart
Journeys,
is flying the Wright brothers
Zoomies.
Plane across all these great modern American mall stores, and nothing's happening because it's after 10 o'clock. And it's like,
what
really?
I was thinking is, what if the Vietnam vets at the memorial came to life and started to massacre nearby villages in the across the Potomac? Like, there's a shot of like metal soldiers, platoon style, coming out over like fucking Annapolis and just like razing it to the ground.
I think this did open up too much. This is like what we've talked about with the Terminator and why the first Terminator is so good, because it's fucking contained. It's about time travel, which makes no sense if you think about it. But because it was contained in a very small, tight 90, you don't have to worry about it. And then Terminator 2 opens it up so much. So you're like, wait, that doesn't make sense. What about this? And now we have statues coming to life. We got pictures coming to life. We got paintings coming to life. We got all this shit where there's apparently micro universes inside every goddamn piece of art ever made.
So here's, again, so many massive, horrible questions that drove me crazy watching this. Let's start with the one you just touched on. In this movie, Lincoln comes to life in the Lincoln Memorial. Why is the marble that constitutes him as a statue conscious, but the building that surrounds him of the same material connected to him is not conscious?
Well, Josh...
So what's the fine print on the limitless power of the tablet, which again is alluded to in this as being this expansive world-controlling entity that is given just zero direction?
I think I understand that one.
Why isn't the whole memorial talking?
I'll explain it to you.
Why can't we talk? Okay, fine.
Because Akenmafa's... Akenra?
Just say the great Hank Azaria, whose single goal in life is to play as many non-white races as possible before he dies. And God bless him. God bless Hank Azaria, a very talented, funny man who is not funny in this terrible movie.
He just grew up in an era where you could just... It wasn't a bad idea to put on accents of Indian and Egyptian. Like, it didn't matter in the 80s if you talked like somebody else.
This movie was made in 2009.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't understand how in the first movie they at least made the effort of getting Rami Malek to play an Egyptian person, and in this movie they're like, fuck it.
Get Hank. He's known for this shit.
Yeah.
But here's the thing is we do know that at night we think its history comes alive, but I think this one sort of makes it art comes alive. This is all about art. So Josh, this is the test. You have a 3-year-old that can paint with its hands and face, and you're like, oh, I can make art. You bring this tablet into the room. If that shit doesn't come alive, it's not art. This is like the art test. So
you're saying that the untapped resource that this movie does not explore enough with the tablet is to objectively judge whether or not something is artistic,
right?
Definitively,
everything.
Okay.
So that's why the building, even though it's as old as the statue, doesn't come alive because it's stupid. Doesn't make you feel anything. It's not art. And someone who says, oh, I disagree, it makes me feel a certain way because of the straight lines and the whatever. You're like, no, Akenra's tablet proves that.
So strictly things that are deliberately meant to reflect, no matter how abstractly or obtusely, and I'm thinking of the Jeff Koons aluminum blow-up toy dog thing that squeaks around.
Yeah.
If it even vaguely attempts to replicate something sentient, then specifically that exact inanimate object is given the magical power to have consciousness.
Well, I wouldn't even say that. I'd say that what's his name's urinal, that would just be just like fucking piss soaked.
Marcel Duchamp's urinal.
Yeah, Duchamp's urinal.
Like a gleeful, piss guzzling, deliberately avant-garde urinal.
So it doesn't need to look human or look like a shape of an animal or a human to come to life. It needs to evoke something that is artistic.
Okay, yeah.
So maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just like the piss urinal. And maybe if I came in there with after sundown.
Hold on,
of course.
is that where Duchamp's infamous urinal is? I don't think it's
No, I'm sure it's in France. The French love that shit.
They love piss. But I'm sorry, so you just specifically chose as an example something not remotely related to the purview of this museum.
No, I'm just saying you could bring Akenra's tablet anywhere you wanted.
Okay.
And
okay.
It doesn't need to be a balloon animal, like, oh, because that looks like something that could scamper, it will come to life. It just means if this makes you, as a human being, feel something like that art is supposed to, art makes you feel good. Art makes you feel sad.
Me and art is like this. I'm doing the finger thing where we're entwined.
Right.
Okay, so you raised a really good point a moment ago in your inane ramblings.
That's great.
In the Museum of Natural History, we are led to believe that specifically that community of weird living mannequins come to life because for 50 years the tablet has been specifically in that building. Now,
correct.
There is only one of these tablets in existence, so presumably no other museum in the world would have a similar equitable experience of having everything come to life at night, because that's the whole thing about the singular power of the tablet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I don't understand. Yeah, go. It makes no sense.
Let me finish this chain. If that is true, how would any of these things in the Smithsonian know about they've never been sentient before this one moment, and yet go spring to life as though they've been going to life every night for 1,000 years. They know where everything is. They know all these relationships. They know all this stuff. How? They've never been alive before tonight because the tablet's just gotten there for the first time.
That was the thing. They had the reason why we need to know that it's Akenra.
Just call him Hank.
No, I'm talking about the other one, the younger brother.
Okay, you just call him Rami.
Okay,
that's Rami.
Rami
this
and
is
Hank. So the reason why Rami in the first one, they were actually like, Attila the Hun could only speak in the bullshit Hun language because he didn't bother to learn anything else because he had only had the tablet for a little bit of time. But Rami, who for 50 years has been sort of hopping around with the tablet because it's his tablet, he's had the opportunity to come to life every night, learn different languages, meet new friends, have a fucking ball. But you're right. Hank, this is his first night that he's been alive, and he comes in speaking, do you speak French? Do you speak Egyptian? Do you speak...
Right, how would that Egyptian king have known French? That's insane. Or you have Ivan the Terrible, who, by the way, if you're gonna fucking cast Christopher Guest, what the fuck? They cast one of the funniest people in the world to do nothing. He gets one little bit about how his real name is Ivan the Awesome, and that's he doesn't even have jokes.
No,
really. It's perverse.
This is one of the big problems with the movie. I mean, there's lots of problems with this movie, but one of them is that they repeat the same no touching bit in the same movie twice. And it was sort of funny the first time, but that's the whole style of humor from these two losers is you could tell they packed this movie with Apatow people at the time that were very big. And Apatow knows how to have a real-ish conversation that's a little bit stylized, but it's about the way humans sort of hem and haw while they're talking to each other, not quite talk about what they want to. And his comedy is about the way we communicate. And this is the shitty version of an Apatow movie.
Well, the ultimate version of that is that we get... I was pretty excited to see that Jonah Hill was in this because I think Jonah Hill is generally a ray of light whenever he appears. And the fact that he gets one scene to do a bit with Ben... And I'm not complaining. It was one of the rare scenes in the movie where I was like, oh, this is this funny camaraderie they earn, this respect that they have, the classic Jonah Hill thing of going from hot to cold and back and forth. All that worked in this little exchange. Mm-hmm. And then he's gone. He's gone from the movie. And it's that was working. Very little works in this movie.
I felt the same way. Nothing was working. And then Jonah Hill shows up. And I was like, oh, this is actually great. I'm really, I laughed a couple of times. It sort of felt like Steve Coogan and Owen Wilson did in the first movie. And that's completely gone at this point. But that was a moment where I was like, oh, they have this guard ship together, and he's like...
Well, then also we're talking about a series or a franchise. Passing the baton to Jonah Hill is a brilliant move. Why would you waste that?
Yeah, he could have been his fucking sidekick the whole movie. What the fuck? Though, passing the baton, you said that, I was noticing some pretty interesting... I know I brought up Buffy last episode and how they destroyed the Buffy bot in a similar way that they were going to destroy Stiller, by drawing and quartering him. And this got me thinking about Buffy. I don't know if you want to go down this alley. I'm sure you don't, but I'm probably going to do it anyway. So unless you put up a big
you've done
fight.
a considerable lead up to it, so I feel like at this point, were I to attempt to pump the brakes, it would be in vain. So why don't you deliver on your Buffy-related rant, and we'll go from there.
Okay, and if you don't watch Buffy, you don't like Buffy, you don't really want to hear about Buffy, then
tough titties. That's the show.
Just
fuck you.
Or you can skip 5 minutes.
No, how about fuck you? No. Don't skip around. Sit the fuck down. This is the show. You downloaded it. You're listening to our Night at the Museum 2 coverage. So guess what? You can also stand a little bit of Buffy. That show kicks ass. Charles, please.
So here's my first thing, which doesn't really relate to the thing you just mentioned, but it's sort of an overarching. I think that Buffy and the Night Guard are very similar in that they spend all day doing a reel, like going to school, working a job, yet they still find time every night to patrol all fucking night, hang out with friends, kill shit, like, and then they have to, they just do this nonstop. They're awake all the time.
You're looking at this in a very Charles way, but I would say you're touching on a very real thing, which is that, the alienation Buffy experiences constantly living this life beyond belief, consumed by violence and loss and pain. And it's like that becomes a huge part of that exploration of that character is the fact that she at one point, how far into season 6 are you?
We just started. We're on episode 4.
Okay.
So not too far. But this sort of starts to come up like when she goes back and meets the original Slayer again in season 5, near the end of season 5. She's like, how do I be a weapon of evil and still maintain a life of good?
Right. So that series, I'm not going to reveal anything. It really digs into this idea of like, what does it mean to spend most of your life in this very bizarre, extreme world that no one else understands or acknowledges? And this movie, like all of Larry's undertakings, and this leads me to my other big point that it ties into what you just said about Buffy in a way that brings it all back around. And this is why the show is so good.
I'm so glad you didn't skip.
We're firing.
If you skipped 4 or 5 minutes, you missed it.
Fuck you.
You missed it. Yes,
okay.
Fuck you.
The big comparison point for this movie, for other work we've done on this benighted podcast, is that Larry is doing a Fast and Furious, where in the first movie, he's a bumbling, unemployable, divorced dad who stumbles into a job he doesn't want to do and eventually, through his good spirit or whatever, becomes a beloved fixture at the museum.
I think it was
in this movie,
the magic of history, but yes, go ahead.
In this movie, he's a genius inventor CEO who breaks into the Smithsonian, eventually fights an Egyptian god in hand-to-hand combat. And it's like the escalation, we talked a lot during the Fast and the Furious series, how they're literally robbing like VCRs in the first one. And then the fifth one, they, drag a bank vault through Rio. So the escalation from the first movie in this series to the second movie is pretty fucking extreme. Like, Larry literally can't be employed in the first movie. His ex-wife is worried about him.
Yeah.
And now he's like, I'll take a night off from being a CEO, going to interview with Walmart for a new product, to break into the Smithsonian and have a heist of an ancient Egyptian magical tap. Like, come on. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing. It's like he had all these ideas, and that was part of the fun, was that he was bad. He was bad at life because he wanted to do stuff that was unimportant. And the first movie, as sort of dumb as it was like, the magic of history is cool, but also the magic of friendship. Like, I really liked that there was no romance trying to tuck in there. He meets the docent? Is that what it's called when you
docent?
Docent. Yeah. He meets the docent, and you're like, oh, she's cool and beautiful, and this is basically a late 90s idea, so of course they're gonna not fuck but fall in love or whatever, and they don't. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is where he just learns that he likes history a lot. And the second one just totally throws that away, and now he's the god of flashlights. And
well, no, also, okay, so the thing is, if the first part of this movie with George Foreman and the infomercial felt so surreal, I was almost like, okay, if the bit is he wakes up from napping at another job he hates, or the idea of he only succeeded from the last movie, and this is the moving of the goalposts that drove me crazy. In the first movie, everyone's like, Jesus, Larry, get a fucking job. Think about your kids, you fucking delinquent. In this movie, he's a successful entrepreneur who is only watching his success continue unimpeded to shoot upwards. And his son's like, Daddy's working again tonight. And it's like, pick a side. He doesn't
Right.
like when he doesn't have a job, it's a big problem. Then he gets a job where that's like self-motivated, the capitalist dream of running his own business, and people still give him shit.
I know.
And then like I wanted to get to this because this drove me absolutely crazy. We need to spend a lot of time talking about Amelia Earhart because oh boy.
So before we get there,
boy.
there was a nice little segue out of that to bring it back to Buffy, and then I hope we can catapult like a star or whatever they shoot to the moon, where you like use the planet's orbit to go somewhere else.
You slingshot. You slingshot.
So I'm gonna quickly go back to Buffy so that we can slingshot, I hope, outside of Buffy back to Amelia Earhart, because we were talking about Jonah Hill, I was thinking a lot in season 6. So the end of season 5 of Buffy, she dies. And normally, she's died once before, maybe twice. A new Slayer emerges because that's how the Slayer works. When the Slayer dies, a new Slayer is born. And sort of the fun of season 2 or 3, whatever, was that there's now 2 Slayers running around.
The completely unparalleled Eliza Dushku is Faith. She's just a Southie. By the way, Eliza Dushku is from Worcester, which makes it even more pathetic.
Yeah, she really fucking
like she's
sucked
someone
at
from
that.
Worcester trying to pretend to be a Southie, which is fucking humiliating.
Yeah. Ugh.
That is a real Eastern Mass faux pas.
And while I like that they're not trying to now have 3 Slayers, it is a little bit weird to try to they haven't explained it yet. Maybe there is a 3rd Slayer out there they're just not talking about. I'm only on episode 3 or 4. What would have been very cool is that what if Jonah Hill, like he's been gone for years from the Natural History Museum. There must have been a new guard. Like, we needed a second Slayer, so then the number 2 movie, the sequel, could have had 2 guards. How cool is that? Movie number 2, 2 night guards that are now like maybe coming at odds. They really could have dealt with friendship where they like learn to be buddies, even though they're standoffish at first. I don't know, but I thought that would have been a very cool way to like get us into this idea that the guardship never ends. There's a series of guards. Maybe this could have been like the Knightsmen or whatever, where there's like a secret underground guard.
So what you're hitting on is the aching lack of stakes in this movie because it's so fucking bizarre and inexplicable. Like, yes, if there was some kind of, again, to beat this into the ground, some kind of passing of a baton thing, it would sort of make sense. In this movie, the woefully unsuccessful Natural History Museum of New York, the most beloved fucking museum in America, they're packing away all that boring old dusty stuff for a shitty hologram machine or something, which, by the way, never mentioned again. And for reason that then they go to DC and the tablet, it's terrible. And then he just brings them all back. And then the next scene is, and things are now better than ever. And it's like, what the fuck? There's the arc of this movie is bizarre. So they shoehorn this horrible plot line where Amelia Earhart, played by the wonderful Amy Adams, who can do no wrong, and I really enjoyed her in this. She, at one point, and this is how lazy this entire thread is for Larry, she accuses him of losing his moxie. At one point, we're talking about a man who is a self-made millionaire who is in the process of performing an elaborate heist at the largest museum in the world with inanimate objects. And somehow out of that, they pry the idea that he's lost his will for fun as he runs around the Smithsonian fighting Egyptian gods and hanging out with cowboys. And she's like, wow, you've really lost that glimmer in your eye. And it's like, what the fuck is this? His life is fine. Can't we have a story where it's not like he just had to go back to being a guard again? Like, it's so lazy and makes no sense. Like, the lack of a coherent story, it was so frustrating.
Yeah. No, I and great slingshot, by the way. I really appreciated that. But this movie, like, it was watchable, but it kept undermining itself. Like, there's no stakes going on. There's no, dude, what the fuck happened to Owen Wilson and Steve Coogan? They're just like right from the get-go, Owen Wilson is doing the most bizarre cowboy accent, and Steve Coogan suddenly like amped up his Roman gladiator accent. It was nice just that they were Steve Coogan and Owen Wilson. I like those two men. I don't want them to be cowboys or Roman gladiators.
Well, we're talking about the franchise effect because, again, in the first movie, Owen Wilson is uncredited. He was supposed to be a cameo. And then he tested so well, they brought him back to do a lot more. So in this, now he's like, okay, I'm Jed, and I've got this whole thing now, and he really sort of leans into it, and it does take away some of the spontaneity and the incongruously relaxed nature of their interactions, which made it so funny in the first movie.
Yeah, I love the first one where they're like the scene where they're like, "You don't want to be like the Mayans, do you? I locked them up." And he's like, Just like, it would be like Owen Wilson be like, no, that's not fun. I don't want to be locked up like the Mayans. And it's just like, there's all that magic is gone. He's just like a fucking little cowboy. Anyone could have played him.
And then with Coogan, I love Steve Coogan, someone who generally can do no wrong. Just kind of muted in this movie. Doesn't really pop. I think the bit with the squirrel was kind of cute, but didn't really manifest into much. Like the reveal of him riding the squirrel, I guess, was fine, but it felt like a missed opportunity. I wanted to get into the truly nauseating liberal subplot of this movie. As two cranky leftists, I think we can bitch about this. This movie came out in 2009 and includes lots of really, really fucking shitty political observations that made me livid. Namely, Octavius is like, I shall go to the White House, for a great man doth rule this land, at one point. And you're like, Octavius is a Obama stan? Like, what the fuck?
He would hate, in most ways, he would hate Obama.
Yeah, he was an emperor. And though, like,
yeah,
I don't know, I guess the lazy right-wing version is that, like, Obama, he was a friggin' Roman emperor. It's like, well, one, that's fucking stupid. And two, just unnecessary. Like having weird cheerleading from a Roman about Obama is just weird. It makes no sense.
I just, like, immediately threw it away. Like, it was so bad. I was like, all right, whatever. I sort of even forgot that he went to the White House.
Right. Okay. Then later in the movie, Abe Lincoln is like, yes, in 2009, things sure are fucking on fleek. This is rad. I declare 2009 to be the dopest year yet, basically. And it's like, dude, the fucking wealth disparity, racist cops, like the myriad array of nightmarish problems this country has been, meddling in other cultures, intractable military conflicts, private prisons, factory farming. But like in 2009, dumbass Abe Lincoln's like, yes, this shit is baller.
And I do not lie.
Jesus Christ.
I like that was like, he was like, they do not know where to stand on like what it means to be an artifact. Like in the first one, they sort of grappled with that, where it's like, well, they also fucked up with Sacagawea, where it's like she's somehow the original Sacagawea, but Robin Williams is just like a wax dude on a horse. And it's the same thing here. It's like Abe Lincoln becomes, because of his dumb, like Honest Abe, he actually becomes a tool for knowing what a lie is. And he's like, they say it over and over again, for whether he's got a hot new girlfriend or how cool the world is. Honest Abe just knows it all.
And you touched on something else here, which is everyone in this movie is horny, which I found bad.
Oh, I didn't pick up on the horniness. I picked up just on Amelia's horniness.
Well, Amelia's horny for Ben Stiller, which is, as a Jew, I like the idea of more movies implying that someone as like devastatingly attractive as Ben Stiller would have, an Amy Adams type jumping on him. But I found that weird. But everyone interrogates their relationship throughout the movie. There's so much pressure on them to have a sexual or romantic component to their partnership.
Yeah.
Where I didn't need it at all. And it felt even more weird to have both Napoleon, Abe Lincoln, and a succession of other formerly inanimate objects being like, so you guys fucking or what? You get it wet yet, bro? She drive stick or what?
Also, so did you notice that the director of the film played the person that you think is Ben Stiller in the opening scene when he's like, it's the lights have gone out. You're trying to find a flashlight. How do you do it? And then like a guy that stumbles and like hits the night desk while he's walking around.
That was the great Sean Levy?
Yeah. And here's what I think. I think that he is probably the same height as Ben Stiller, who is probably the same height as Napoleon. There were so many short jokes. There were so many things like desperately trying to not be short. I do think that he has a thing. Levy has a thing about being short, and he has secretly used the Night at the Museum franchise to try to alleviate some of this emotional pressure of being a short man.
Okay, I didn't really pick up on that, but that's interesting enough, I suppose.
Well, I mean, you got the horniness vibe. I got the short vibe. Like Napoleon, basically his whole joke is that he's short.
But that's like the perennial Napoleon joke, the Napoleon complex. That's a reference to a long-standing...
He could have chosen anyone. Napoleon, honestly, is he that bad of a guy compared to every other European leader from that century?
There's a million historical things with this movie. And look, I understand before anyone like rolls their eyes, it's a kids movie, it's idiotic by design, whatever. But this whole culture of history is just fun. Isn't it fun to talk about history stuff when the history that's actually being expressed is completely bizarre, made up bullshit, is just bad. It's not good. And one of the most obvious things is that, and Ivan the Terrible touches on this, which is a great thing to have said in my life, these people would not have been perceived as villainous in their lives. So this idea of like putting together the ultimate cabal of evil, Ivan the Terrible, Napoleon, Al Capone, and a made-up Egyptian guy, like that's psychotic. That also is the same movie that not only continues to rehabilitate the reputation of avid racist Teddy Roosevelt, but then brings in General George Custer, who, well, yes, fought for the Union, defeated Jeb Stuart's charge at Gettysburg. I'm not holding that against him. It's good that he fought against the Confederate Army. They were shitheads, and I'm happy they died. But this movie is about, even with the delightful Bill Hader, who again is somehow misused despite being perfect in most other roles.
Yeah.
General George Custer died in a war against Native Americans
trying to
expansion.
eradicate. Yeah.
Right. So this idea that George Custer was sort of like a, oh, what a wacky character that guy was. He was in the middle of like a really objectively, historically horrible military campaign of oppression against people who objectively were in the right, against American imperialism.
The scene where he's like hiding and you're like, they just make him out to be a coward. They don't talk about how atrocious he was. They're just like, oh, he was a fake leader.
Well, here's the thing. His legacy, a lot of historical discussion around Custer focuses on whether or not his death was in vain or stupid or brilliant, or if he was failed, or if he but my point is, who gives a fuck? He was a cog in an imperial racist colonial wheel that did horrible things to people. So who gives a fuck?
I was reading a little bit about him while watching it and afterwards, and it's like so much controversy about this guy. I was like, oh cool, I'm gonna get into the juice of how much of a shithead he is. And it's like historians can't quite figure out if he was not great, not quite good at being a general, or pretty good at being a general. And it's like, what the fuck? Who gives a shit? He was like just out there murdering people that he didn't like, that he wanted out of this country.
No, but you're missing the point. General Custer wasn't a uniquely evil person. He was just another shitty, opportunistic cog in a massive machine. So to focus on him at all, I think obfuscates the larger issue of like what it means and how this movie perpetuates that exact same dynamic of like, oh, he's just another part of America, and what a colorful character. And like that's what drives me crazy. And it's even more insulting that they have him not be able to say Sacagawea, which sucks ass and is like insulting on so many levels, because like Roosevelt, he specifically was part of the persecution of Native people.
Yes.
So to have all those bits is like, it's not just insensitive, it's like weirdly, like, again, I'll go back to it, perverse. There seems like a weird glee in letting these people who specifically hated Native Americans do these shitty jokes.
And Sacagawea she didn't even have a line until that moment of the film. Like, she's in the opening scene and she doesn't say anything. They give a lot of time to cavemen babbling and racist versions of Attila the Hun speaking, and she's just silent as though she's behind her glass wall again. And then she says one line about how like dumb Custer is, which is fine, but then she's basically not used again. Did you notice at the end when all the people were coming out of the plane? She doesn't even come out of the plane, and yet she's magically back. They don't even give her the time to see her come out of the plane and go back to the museum. I don't even know why she was in the movie.
It's so whack. And as you move down the list of problems with this movie, and again, we'll fully explore Amelia Earhart in a minute. The moment where the Tuskegee Airmen thank Amelia Earhart for clearing the way for integration in the armed services.
That was sick.
The kind of like nightmarish liberal concoction of like attempted wokeness that is so genuinely bizarre and nonsensical. Like, white women have a well-documented history in the racist oppression of black men. Like, Emmett Till whistling at a white woman led to him being lynched as a teen. And that's one of a billion stories of the nightmarish way that whiteness, more so than gender, has been part of like what kept African Americans in a miserable, marginalized position for so long in this country, which of course persists until today. So like that incredibly cheap throwaway line that equates those two experiences was like monstrous, like genuinely bad.
Yeah, it's the way, as you said, it's just like the unintentional, like they think they're being really cool and woke and nice to include that little moment, but not only is it just like doesn't really make any sense. But also, it ends up with her being like, all right, boys, just go and kill your, like, base. And obviously no one's going to die in this movie because it's a fucking dumb kids movie with no stakes, but they're like, she just uses them as human bodies to get in the way of the people with spears and guns trying to kill her.
Right. Oh my God, you're dead right. And then also there's the fact that, again, knowing anything about American history, you know, when Jesse Owens won big in Berlin in the Olympics in the 30s, Hitler met with him, which is crazy, and FDR didn't. Okay? So like, and then so many black veterans came back, and I am anti-Hitler. So many black veterans came back from that conflict, and so many others having served their country, just to find the exact same limitations, the exact same brutal segregation, the exact same institutional violence. So just the flattening of history into these cute pastiches is actually dangerous and morally and historically wrong. It's sad to think that people would show this to their kids and be like, oh, this is cute and fun.
And this is
it's not.
Ultimately the problem with this whole franchise so far is that it is attempting to show us the magic of history in the same way that a Texas public school is going to show you the magic of history. In that they're just going to show you all the nice moments that make you feel good and not talk about everything else that's terrible. And I think the ending of this movie culminates in that exact idea, in that as much as you might disagree or agree, the Natural History Museum is trying to change. It's trying to update and trying to maybe show you something new. And no, Ben Stiller, who has learned so much in these two movies, is like, here are millions of dollars to stay exactly the same. I don't actually want to know anything about history. I don't actually want to have real relationships. This dude is a fucking piece of shit loser that doesn't have any friends, doesn't have any family, and he just sort of has friends with this dumb Owen Wilson doll. And that's what he wants. He doesn't want anything new. He likes that Amelia Earhart is a wax doll.
Right. And the movie forces him to go back to this bullshit. They're like, stop thinking about your own goals and dreams and hopes. Go back to tending to these bizarre, immortal wax creatures who just have shenanigans at night. And that's your true. It's so strange. The message, it could not be weirder, especially, again, it's totally the opposite of the first movie, which leads me to something else that made me very upset. Okay, so this is a two-parter. Let's start with this. Not only at the Smithsonian does every single thing in the general vicinity of the museum come to life, every single picture and painting we are led to believe contains a pocket universe that you can slip into that is immersive, limitless, and populated with a seemingly infinite number of sentient creatures who are trapped forever in the worlds of these pictures, which as a plot device to bring up, I feel like it's the Bobcat Goldthwait thing of it all. If someone fucks a dog, it's not a throwaway joke. That's the entire premise of a Bobcat Goldthwait movie. If you can enter a painting or picture and have it be a limitless universe, and that's 5 minutes of the movie, you're like, what the fuck? That's so much crazier than anything else happening, That's so wild.
They touch on it at the end that apparently in this new version of 1946 or whatever, Joey Motorola makes the cell phone. So this is a whole new pocket universe where they get the cell phone decades before they needed it. And I don't know what he's going to do with it without the towers and the infrastructure and all the, the networks. But Joey Motorola, he lives in that picture, whoever fucking took that picture. And oh boy, they got cell phones there.
Obviously, it was V-Day. And in real life, he would have been passed out on cheap gin by 2 p.m. after punching a Japanese person or something. And that leads me to my other thing about that. That infamous photo, which people often, it's synonymous with, we won the war and look at this romantic kiss. The story of that kiss is super fucked up. It's really under talked about, and I'm happy to have a platform to talk about it. That sailor, George Mendoza, was with a different woman and just grabbed this woman out of nowhere and forcibly kissed her against her will.
Which Ben Stiller does.
Right.
He recreates that moment by, I fucking hate that thing where it's like, oh, someone's coming looking for us, let's make out. It's the cheapest way someone can make a movie where a guy just gets to kiss someone for no reason. And it's
fine in Mission Impossible because Tom Cruise can do no wrong. But go ahead.
Okay. So wait, so far Tom Cruise can do no wrong, Coogan can do no wrong, Bill Hader can do no wrong, and Amy Adams can do no wrong.
I fundamentally like all of them and all of their appearances, yes.
Okay. But they did it a little bit of wrong, I think, by being in this movie. But maybe in the same way that Eugene Levy was in Bandcamp Presents: Beta House. I don't know.
Bandcamp Presents: Beta House. That's good. That's a shirt.
Do you think he did wrong by being in Bandcamp Presents: Beta House?
No, look, it's a direct-to-video. Make your money.
He
was probably spent roughly like half an hour shooting that movie.
Do you
so
think
good for him.
Eugene Levy did wrong being in Night at the Museum 2: Smithsonian Battle as a little Albert Einstein bobblehead?
That was him?
That's Eugene Levy.
Oh, wow. That was lost on me.
Yeah,
he
didn't do great.
Talk about the flattening out of everything in this movie. Even these incredible character actors are just like crushed by the weight of this stupid movie.
That's what we've already talked about a little bit with like Owen Wilson and Coogan. Like they were the stakes are so fucking low, but in a nice way in the first one that like it allows for, Ricky Gervais, Steve Coogan, all these people to just sort of like do their thing. This movie had so much dumped on them while keeping the stakes low, but just like action and bullshit happening all the time that all these like funny people didn't really actually get a chance to do very much. Like, why would you even bother hiring Eugene Levy to just be a little fucking doll that doesn't sound like Eugene Levy, or all he does is recite pi? That's like literally...
And the Egyptian tablet mystery makes no fucking sense at all.
It's like a fucking Da Vinci Code shit, where like the answer is built
so ludicrous.
The answer would not exist. That question doesn't make any sense. The answer only means something thousands of years later.
Can you honestly explain to me how pi would have entered into that at all? I thought they had to go into the tomb to find something, because I was like, oh, literally the secret's in the pharaoh's tomb. So I was like, oh, that makes sense. They got to go into the tomb and there's like some sort of answer or code written in there.
And pi has nothing to do with triangles.
Right.
Pi is a
then
circle
all of a sudden they're
thing,
like
guys.
the center of a literal pyramid. Like it's a kind of circular thinking that is so odd. But look, we got to talk about Amelia Earhart.
We do.
Amelia Earhart lived a challenging, difficult life. Her parents divorced. She was a pioneer for women in a field that was like bitterly against them. She had to work her fucking ass off to be a pilot. And in this movie, I looked up some videos of her talking. Most people don't know that the Middle Atlantic accent, like the Cary Grant accent, is made up. It's not real. No one ever talked like that. Now, while Amelia Earhart in old footage of her has like a sort of, era-specific intonation, she sort of talks a bit like this. And yes, that and that. In this movie, the whole like, Jimmy Jam Jum Jum, fun's the game, hip's the name. Like, it's like very schizophrenic. And then the fact that she, as a woman, she has to be romantically attracted to the lead above any other thing fucking sucks. And then she didn't go to Micronesia. She says, like, she never went to Micronesia. She didn't, like, do everything. Not everyone did everything.
Yes, this is why, like...
She did plenty.
If you want to make a movie about the magic of history, it's got to be historical. You can't have fake shit happen just because you want... I hate it.
Well, the idea that, like, she did all that work just to have fun flying, because it's fun, like... It's just like, it's nihilistic. Her life was one of great struggle and hardship, and she probably worked really hard because she felt a certain way flying that she could never feel on Earth given the things that she had to contend with. And to take a really fascinating and dark story and to plunge it to these, saccharine depths is just so frustrating.
Yeah. And like in the same way that they like did that, like these directors are like, look how cool this like, yeah, man, Obama rules and 2009's awesome. I love the scene where she's flying out of the Smithsonian and one of the guys is like, hey, you got a vagina. You can't fly that thing. And then the other guy's like, wow, she's so cool.
He's like, damn, that's a woke girl boss, and that's the T, sis. Those two people are, of course, Thomas Lennon and Robert Benjamin Garant, who wrote the movie. There's that shot of them holding the astronaut ice cream being like, my God, that woman's the best pilot I've ever seen, which no one ever said. She just was a pioneering, like, the point is that people can be impressive for the real things they did without this weird, breathless, inaccurate slobbering that just makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, it's, the pandering and just bullshit. I mean, it was also just like an ad for the Smithsonian, I think. It's like, do you like it when the kid was the kid in the chair and he's just like looking at the Microsoft Earth map of the Smithsonian?
Yeah,
like, Dad,
it's the biggest
museum in the world.
A useless
Dad,
child.
it's so fucking cool. They don't even talk about. I was hoping that there'd be a scene where, because he loses his cell phone in the picture, the grimy, awful picture, and I was thinking that would be a plot point where they'd be like, we couldn't get in touch with you for a whole night. What happened? Or something. But no, just a plot point to have Joey Motorola show up at the end. Like, dude, do you even see the kid? Yeah, that's right. He's chilling at the museum at night.
Yeah, but that's it. That's what I'm saying. Just
Right.
like with the holographic Teddy Roosevelt, which is completely evaporated the second it's introduced. The kid's just like, gee, this is fun. Like, Dad's back to the museum. Like, that's just it. Like, I don't know. Like, it feels like they skipped over a more fitting chapter, which would be Larry realizes it's his time to leave, and we watch him leave the museum, pass the baton, and then like help that person. Like there could have been, they just skipped a whole chapter that would have sort of made sense, and instead it's the classic like movie 2. We go balls to the walls and just scrap anything that was vaguely charming about the first movie for the sake of going big.
And think, you know, speaking of balls, things they scrapped and going big, they erased the thinker's penis. They erased the Cupid's penis.
Some of the most famous hogs in history.
Gone. So this is what I'm saying. This movie is not interested in history. This movie is not interested in the magic of history. They're making up shit about Amelia Earhart. They're removing dicks, which is like the only reason why you go to the museum anyways. You just see some fucking dick, some fucking
some
tit.
classically accurately rendered historical dicks. That's important. And, you know, the thing that the base of all of this is that once again, they've got a cool idea. What would it be like to run around an even bigger museum at night and manage to just lose any of that?
It's
so
because
quickly.
It's too big. Josh, we got too fucking big. The museum, the biggest museum in the world, is not the place for this movie because it's endless. Like, they spent too little time on everything that they could do. There's just too much.
Yeah.
There's just too much. It's why, as much as I don't really like Star Wars, and I'm very sorry for talking about it, I understand why when you go to a planet, like, there's only one town on the planet, and that's it. Because if you actually went to a planet and sort of tried to figure out how to, like, navigate an entire, like, civilization, but then 20 of them, it's just too much. And, like, this just, like, they got lost in all the shit they wanted to do. So much fun could have been had.
Well, you did mention the wars, and we did get a bit of a cameo in this one from a certain helmeted fellow.
That's true.
A certain breathy guy. A certain black-clad Skywalker. No, not Luke. No, I speak of one Anakin Skywalker, or as he's better known, yes, I speak of
Papa
one
Luke.
Darth Vader.
Yeah.
What was the licensing on that? Well,
that was
okay, so
no.
Disney
This was
bought
a
20th Century Fox.
Yes, so this was still a
they
Fox
owned,
joint.
Okay.
Well, this is pre-Disney buying 20th Century Fox. Or yeah.
Then how did they license Vader?
Because this is a 20th Century Fox joint.
So okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah. Well, it definitely cheapened Star Wars. So I guess good for you. You found a way to beat Disney to the punch and ruin Star Wars a few years before the full ruining. So that's cool.
Did you like the little bit of business that we've all been wanting to do? Is like talk shit about Darth Vader and how dumb he looks, and Hank really got to juicy up. Sink those teeth in.
One of many extended bits of the most obvious possible joke that just you're like, dear God. And again, I think you hit on it about the Apatow impact on comedy. Even by 2009 was so profound.
It was huge. Like if you look at this cast,
we're gonna let him riff. We're gonna let Hank just riff right now.
Yes, and that was like it works when you have. I don't know why Apatow worked, but I do think that like the Pineapple Express, End of the World, like those movies. There is a little bit of magic even near the end of that era. And I think for 10 years, Apatow changed the way people made comedies. And this is just like old school style, trying to figure out how to make a movie that's contemporary. And it does not work.
This was the first movie shot in the Smithsonian, which is a real shame.
Oh, is the only, right? Or no, have there been others? I wish we could do the Nick Cage movies. I wish we could do the Nick Cage movies.
Oh, I mean, if we could do fucking National Treasure, we're
I
so
wish
close.
we could do them.
This was so frustrating for exactly that reason, where I'm like, we're just inches away from the entire premise of fucking National Treasure.
Do you think we can make an exception and just do a 2-parter for National Treasure?
I would agree. I agree to that if we also do my favorite 2-part movie series ever, Now You See Me, which is a similar, I would say, a spiritual cousin to National Treasure in
Josh,
the exact same. Yeah.
I know that we're not in the same room, but I offer my hand to you as an agreement, a handshake of agreement, and that we will do both of those. Oh, wow, we're digitally shaking. That was fun. That was good. All right. So soon we'll be doing Nicolas Cage's. So there was supposed to be a third one, and I think because of like John Carter and all these other things, like, wait, what was the story behind Nicolas Cage? Just like they got scared about making a third one for some reason, and I'm so sad about that.
It's a crying shame. It sucks.
I'll look it up real quick. You do something.
So I want to point out another factor of this, because they insist on having an Amelia Earhart romance with Larry, which again just leads up to just a very strange interaction with him and another Amy Adams later in the movie. That's another watery, weird joke. There's that part where Amelia's like, "I know we can't be in love, but but why?" And I'm like, man, you're going to make him explain that your vagina is made of wax?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to actually have him spell out why that's not like you're never going to be able to physically consummate your love. You're a wax.
I was really hoping there'd be a scene, and maybe it wouldn't have worked now. Maybe it wouldn't have worked then. But, he's trying to explain it to her. He's like, you're a wax lady, but I can't say it. And she's like, shush, 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 Ben. Shush, 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 Larry. I know I am made of wax, and during sun hours I will become unwax. I just wished it just like hard cut to him, his dick stuck in wax.
That would be
just going
amazing.
Help! And then he just has to maybe there'd be a whole 20-minute sequence where he's just like walking around fully dressed, but it has like a wax figure stuck to his dick. I mean,
in an American Pie crossover, and if friggin' Jim was doing this, he'd get his dick stuck in wax Amelia Earhart.
It would be so good.
For sure.
I think it's because they never figured out how to get National Treasure into their theme parks.
Wow, that was a long walk for a delightful conclusion. Ed Helms was in this. Mindy Kaling is in this. Just people thrown, like the Irish during the Civil War, just hurled into the line of gunfire just to be shot down by a fucking pointless undertaking.
I think maybe the only person that came out better was Ricky Gervais.
Yes, I guess because there was less pressure on him to play the blustering, pontificating bad guy. He was sort of just weirdly vulnerable in this.
Yeah, and he sort of lost the weird, he had that running bit where he just never finished sentences, and it was a very 2006 style thing that tried to make people laugh, and that was totally gone. And it was much more just a Ricky Gervais doing him. And he's best when he's just playing himself, and I like that he sort of likes Ben Stiller, but can't admit to it. So that just seemed very much like an Office sort of thing where he just doesn't know how to say the thing he wants to say. And I don't know, it really worked for me.
Well, let's get to the grand finale here. I am asking when will it end. This feels like if it goes any bigger, we're really what's left at this point? This was a pretty hollow undertaking. I think this movie also feels like the role of Larry, the central character that leads us through this, has become so malleable and affectless that we're left with this sort of generic white brown-haired man just doing stuff. I don't give a shit. The first movie, the emotional stakes for Larry kind of are what make it a charming movie, where we're like, oh, he's a father, he's got dreams. And this, it's well, now he's a successful entrepreneur, and women, Amy Adams is hurling herself at him, and everyone likes him, and he just is now. I feel where does it go from here? What could the stakes possibly be? They've gone so flat that I have no more questions about this world.
Yeah, I mean, it's also another Levy joint, and so far he's been pretty. Who gives a shit? I don't really...
unremarkable. What?
Yeah.
How would you describe his directing style?
Yeah, Unremarkable's good. Yeah, it's bad. The writing's been bad the whole way through. I'm also asking when will it end. I don't care, and especially the only thing I know about the third one, because I got it out of the library and I have the Blu-ray right across the room from me. It's called Secret of the Tomb. I liked that the first one set up maybe this was unintentional, but I liked that Rami was, you thought he might be the villain because he was like contained and never got out. He was trying to get out. And he turns out to be just a dancing freak and lovely gentleman. And I hated that, like, now they're back to, like, this one was about an Egyptian god fucking, like, mummy guy. And now it's called The Secret of the Tomb. Or, like, are we just going to be stuck in, like, Egypt as the bad place over and over again?
Well, and also, it's like the kind of thing where these series end up looking, like, staring at their feet, where it's like, we don't need more Pharaoh shit. We've covered Pharaoh shit. How are you possibly going back to the Pharaoh shit well again?
I don't want it. I want something fresh. I want something new, and I don't think Night at the Museum: Secret of the Tomb is going to give it for me.
Yeah.
Teddy's back. He's second build. He's on the fucking cover of the Blu-ray. It's just like,
and also the existential peril of the museum has been. That's been a factor in both of the first two movies. So I'm looking, the tagline for the third movie is "One final night to save the day." And it's like, we've already seen the museum go through these existential threats. I'm at a loss as to what they think we're going to be getting out of this. So I don't know. This sucks.
The first one, it was about a man that was lost, and he sort of used this connection to history and being at the museum to, like, maybe get a connection to his son who he's losing track of, where he thinks he still wants to be a hockey player, but he doesn't really anymore. And they come together. And this is about a guy that is doing well that has to regress to go back to liking his son again. It just didn't make any sense. And I don't know what they're going to do. It's either going to not be about that anymore, so it's just probably going to be about all this crazy shit coming to life and that's it, or they're going to find some new dumb thing where Ben Stiller has to love his son again. And I don't care.
And then what's even more disturbing is that this has been one of the most consistent creative teams on any franchise we've ever done. These are 3 movies in a row with a really stable set of actors, and it sucks. So, like, that's really bad. This isn't the kind of thing where, I mean, usually, even if there's installments in a long-running franchise that we found terrible, there's an excitement to, like, okay, they've passed the ball off, someone else is going to put their stink all over this thing.
Yeah.
And that can be, like, kind of a redemptive quality. In this, where it's the same producers, same director, same writers, just again and again and again. It feels relentless. Okay, let's do MVPs. Who's your pick, Charles?
I got to give it to Hill.
Yeah.
He was... That scene, while it was, I mean, completely undercut later in the movie by him doing the exact same bit where he's supposed to not touch the hourglass filled with a little Jedediah. But, like, it was a new freshness. Jonah Hill fucking rules. He was really great. I'm gonna give it to Brunden or whatever. How'd you pronounce Brunden?
Brunden. That was a good bit. And again, just like another bit thrown into the void where it's like, why even trot out a good bit in this fucking movie? I'm going to give it to Amy Adams because I think she had a really rough go being sexually objectified as a historical dead woman. And I genuinely think she manages to bring a certain weird intensity to all of her performances. And given how thankless this role is, I want to acknowledge that I think she managed to show what she's good at, despite a significant structural challenge that is the script and movie being dog ass.
Do you really? I think really, you were probably thinking of a few different people, but when she comes back at the end at Nameless Woman, who looks like Amelia Earhart, did you just stand up and just breathe in? Just, oh wow, this is a great movie where this guy who wants to fall in love with Amelia Earhart but can't, immediately on the opening night of his new museum that's just like how it used to be, finally gets to fuck a woman who looks sort of like a woman that he doesn't ever get to know. Really great shit.
This movie would be sick if it was like if the Safdie brothers adapted it to just some guy smoking ketamine in a museum. You know?
Yes.
Like that one part of A Good Time, just like drawn out. Like if we hung out with Captain Phillips guy in the fucking haunted house more after he got dosed so brutally.
Yeah.
It's like that would be a cool ass movie. Like some piece of shit on ketamine just stumbles around a museum freaking out because paintings are talking to him. That shit would be amazing. Oh, that reminds me, Charles, I thought of the best crossover in movie history.
What's this?
Watching this movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Who from another series we did recently is fixated on museums? He's a real character. He just loves museums. And a lot of his big statements as a character are based around art.
Huh. Wow. This is a hard question. We
I'll
didn't.
give you a hint.
Yeah, let me get a hint.
Some know him as the Clown Prince of Crime. Others as a man who just wants to watch the world burn.
Oh yes.
What if frickin' Joker Man tries to do a museum heist and only Larry and his little chums can stop a raving psychotic lunatic?
This is what we need. We need. That's why the first one was okay, because it turns out the outside, the actual conflict doesn't come from within the museum world. It comes from without, and Larry teams up with the people, the fake people, to try to battle off the outside world. And this one is it's so insular. It doesn't make any sense. And you're right. Maybe the third one will realize that Dick Van Dyke fucking was necessary. We needed a Dick Van Dyke to really make this thing work. And who knows? Maybe I've already said I'm asking, but hey, that could save the series. We could have a good final.
Here's my one thing. Bring back Nicholson. That's the only way I'll do it. And lastly, we incorrectly stated that Dick Van Dyke is dead, and a listener reached out to me and said Dick Van Dyke is not dead. So
what?
My apologies to Dick Van Dyke, who is alive.
How is he not dead? He's 100.
He's 94. He's not 100. But we were wrong, and I want to apologize to Richard Wayne Van Dyke, born December 13th, 1925, close to Christmas. I wonder if that was hard. In West Plains, Missouri. We apologize. Egg on our faces. You're not dead.
Whoa. You apologize. You haven't even checked in with me.
Oh, my God. Charles, come on.
I'm not going to apologize. I mean,
we said he was dead.
Look, I admit that I'm wrong, and I probably should do more research before I just make statements that I think are facts. But I don't care. He's rich. Whatever. He's old.
Dick, I'm sorry about Charles. You're not dead. That's great. You're a treasure. Charles, let's wrap up the episode. What is a historical wax mannequin you would do sex with?
Wax man? Okay, from the movie or just any?
No, you're strung through a museum, they come to life, and they're hitting on you, and you're like, I guess I would.
Okay, so in the same way that just I'm walking through the museum, it's lively.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them just wants to fuck me for no reason, and I'm just like,
yeah.
Sure.
And who'd you go with?
Well, I would have normally said the Thinker, but penis gone, so I'm not really all that interested in just well, I mean, I guess that brings another...
Essentially fraudage, really. You'd be sort of just doing a lot of friction.
I can do that at home. I wonder do you think the wax part, can I even do it? Do I have to make the hole before? Do I have to wait for them to go back to inanimate?
If you
and then
didn't
drill
have to worry about, if you didn't have to worry about these kind of basic dynamics,
okay,
just on personality alone,
going whale.
Okay, right in the blowhole, I bet.
Yeah, you're right in the fucking blowhole.
Yeah, and for me, it would be Charlemagne, because he created a robust postal system in the 15th century. And that's the show. Next week, Night at the Museum: The Last Museum. Scabadoo, 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 boo. It's the Charles and Josh Show. I have some good stuff for the Sandler episode, and I'm excited to talk about that.
Great.
Too.
Check. Oh, that's working. All right,
Is it working?
You should see this awful setup I have.
How bad is it?
Here, I'll show you. For some reason my microphone does not work on my main computer, so I have to have this. How do I even... Here. So I have that on the floor, which is connected to this mic, but then I have my other computer to do everything else.
Your shit's all fucked up.
Yeah, it's all fucked up. I'm trying to get it better.